Okay, so in this video we're going to look at what we call right angle trigonometry. Okay, means we're going to be using sides and angles. Now the first thing that we need to understand is that this is only good for a right angle triangle. Okay, and a right triangle has a fixed 90-degree angle. So just like Pythagoras, we can only use this for right triangles. Okay, now the fact that we have a fixed 90-degree angle means that we're going to end up with a situation like this. Okay, now because we have a fixed angle, the ratios between the sides have set values for every angle between 0 and 90 degrees. If that doesn't make sense right now, hopefully at the end of the video it will. Let's look at an angle here, and we'll call that theta. This is a Greek letter, it is theta, and it is used often to represent, or usually used to represent, the unknown angle. Now, three sides means that we can create three different ratios, okay? We'll call this the opposite side because that's opposite that angle. We'll call this the adjacent side because it's adjacent to that angle. And we'll call this the hypotenuse because it's the long side. Now, the ratios that we can compare are this, for example. Here's sine. You guys have seen sine before. It's on your calculator, right? Here's the button for sin right there, okay? On your other calculators, it's going to look the same way. So the sine of an angle compares the opposite to the hypotenuse. The cosine compares the adjacent to the hypotenuse, and the tangent compares the opposite to the adjacent. Now that's quite a bit of information, but we have a way to summarize that, okay? And we summarize it by, in this little statement here, SohCahToa. If you've seen that before, you've probably used it. If you haven't, well, this is what it means. It means that the sine ratio, the sine trig ratio, compares the opposite to the hypotenuse, like we discussed. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. These are the three descriptions of the three words. Adjacent simply means beside, right? So this side here is adjacent to that angle. This side is opposite to that angle, and this is always the long side called the hypotenuse. Now, how we name these sides depends really upon which angle we're looking at. So if we're looking at this angle right here, first of all, let's identify the hypotenuse. This has to be the hypotenuse in both cases. What changes is the opposite and the adjacent, right? So opposite this side, opposite this angle and adjacent to that angle. Here, opposite to that angle, adjacent to that angle. This naming of the sides is crucial in getting the questions right. Okay, so I would suggest, if you have difficulty doing this, identify the hypotenuse first, and then look at the angle and do the best you can identifying the opposite and the adjacent. Again, if your triangle is rotated in a way that you can't make sense of it, flip your sheet around so that it's sitting in a way that's easier for you to read. Okay. Now, what I'm going to have here for you, there's three types of questions that we deal with, okay? There's three types of questions that we deal with. And the first one is when you're given an angle and a hypotenuse, okay? Angle and a hypotenuse. So, this is the angle here. How are you going to identify your sides, right? Be a good idea maybe to pause the video and wait a few minutes, or try it, and then you come back and have a look. So here, I'm going to identify sides. This is O, right? And this is H, and this is the A. Now, which ones are you using, and which ones do you have, right? You're using the O and the H. So if you look back, that means that we're going to use sine. Sine of what? Sine of 25 degrees is opposite, which is x, over the adjacent, which is 15. Okay? Need to set this up every single time. The next step is algebra. How are we going to get rid of this? Well, look, sine 25 is just a number. Okay, first of all, I'm going to make sure that I'm in degrees. On your calculator, you got to make sure you're in degrees. And we're going to go sine of 25. So see, sine 25 is simply a number. Okay? We want to find x, so how do we get rid of this 15? We multiply both sides by 15 degrees, or by 15, and we're going to get it. So what we're going to do is 15 times sine out of 25. And it gives me an x value of 6.3, which means that this x value is 6.3. this case, meaning algebraically, what we do here is that we multiply, okay? Variable on top. Okay, variable on top, we multiply. So the next one that we have is when you're given an angle and you're looking for one of the sides, you're looking for the hypotenuse and you're given one of the sides. So pause it again, give it a shot. This is the angle that we're looking at. This is the opposite. This is the hypotenuse. So again, we're using sine. Okay. Now this works for any of the trig ratios. I'm just using sine as an example for each of them. Okay. So sine 25 degrees is now 7, the opposite of the hypotenuse. Again, you need to set up this ratio for every question. Okay. Now notice that in this case, the variable is on the bottom. So it's a bit of a different process, but what we do here is we replace these. The x comes over here, and it's 7 divided by sine 35, okay? So we're going to get a different answer here. So we're going to go 7 divided by sine 20, it's 25. 25 gives me 16.6. Let's round it correctly, so it's 16.6. And again, ask yourself, does that make sense, right? It's supposed to be the long side, so absolutely it makes sense. So this is a different one again. In this case, we divide, and we divide when the variable on the bottom, okay? The two types of questions you get when you need to find the sides. Now the third type of question is going to involve finding the angle given two sides. Okay, so here's another example. I'm looking for this angle. How are we going to do this? Using these sides, how are we going to find that angle? Okay, good time to pause the video. I'll work through it now. Okay, so this is the angle, still the opposite side, and still the hypotenuse. We'll call this the adjacent, but we're only using O and H. So we're taking sine of the angle, but I don't know what the angle is, so we'll just call it theta. But I do know that it's going to be the opposite, which is 7, over the hypotenuse, which is 15. Again, you need to create this ratio. Now, this is a bit of a different button on your calculator. If you're actually looking for the angle, look above the sine button. See this sine -1 thing? Oops, let me slide that up. Sine -1 thing right here, okay? That's what we need to do. So you have the ratio, let's find the angle. So what you do is you go sine -1 of that ratio that you have, and it will give you the angle. So let's go. Second sine, see sine -1, I'll go 7 divided by 15. Boom, and it gives me 27.8 degrees. And we're usually pretty good at rounding. 1 degree is pretty small, so we'll usually round up to the closest degree. Okay, so 27.8 rounds up to 28 degrees. And that, ladies and gentlemen, are the three types of questions that you're going to get using SohCahToa. Again, remember, only for right